Emily Carter adjusted the collar of her thrifted blazer as she stepped into the towering glass building in downtown Chicago. Her worn brown boots clicked awkwardly against the sleek marble floor. She didn't look like the other professionals walking past her with leather briefcases and luxury watches. But she wasn't here to impress anyone with her wardrobe. She was here with an idea. Born in the dirt rows of her father's farm back in rural Iowa, and she was determined to be heard. She checked in at the reception desk, her voice calm but her palms slightly sweaty. "Emily Carter. I have a meeting with the Green Corps board," she said. The receptionist raised an eyebrow before handing her a visitor's pass. "11th floor," she replied, not unkindly but clearly surprised. As Emily rode the elevator up, she took a deep breath and repeated her opening lines in her head. She had done the math. She had reviewed her slides. She had every right to be here. The conference room she was led into was large and intimidating, with glass walls, a long mahogany table, and floor-to-ceiling views of the city skyline. 10 men and 2 women sat around the table, all in suits, flipping through their printed meeting packets. Most didn't look up when she walked in. One man near the back leaned to the person next to him and said with a chuckle, "Is she the intern?" Another, louder this time, muttered, "Let me guess, she brought fresh eggs for us." Laughter rippled down the table. Emily heard every word, but she kept her eyes forward. She walked to the head of the table and introduced herself. "Good morning. I'm Emily Carter, co-developer of the Carter soil regeneration model. I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak." A few people looked up, still half smiling. "You're the daughter of that Iowa farmer, right?" one man said. "And you're here to talk about dirt?" More chuckles followed, some louder this time, not even trying to hide their amusement. Emily paused. For a second her heart sank, but she had heard worse. She had grown up hearing that farm kids didn't go far, that farmers' daughters didn't belong in boardrooms. She smiled politely. "I'm here to talk about soil," she replied calmly. "But more importantly, I'm here to talk about saving it." That line caught the attention of a few. She clicked a small remote, and her first slide lit up the wall. As many of you know, soil degradation in the Midwest has reached critical levels. My father and I spent the last 6 years developing a method that regenerates topsoil naturally, increasing crop yields while reducing fertilizer use by 45%. Someone cleared their throat. Another looked up from his phone. Emily continued without hesitation. "We piloted the method on our own land, then 3 neighboring farms. The results have been verified by the University of Illinois. We're currently in talks with local co-ops in 5 states. What we're proposing is a partnership, funding to expand our trials and integrate data collection for broader scalability." There was a moment of silence, then a scoff from a man at the far end. "This sounds like hobby farming with fancy words." More laughs, though quieter now. Emily didn't flinch. "We've doubled soybean yield in areas previously considered depleted," she added firmly. "The numbers speak for themselves." Just then the door opened and everyone straightened up. James Whitmore, CEO of Green Corps Industries, walked in without a word and took the open seat at the head of the table. The chatter died. He had the quiet authority of someone who rarely had to raise his voice. Emily greeted him respectfully and he nodded. She clicked to the next slide and continued her pitch, her voice calm and factual. This time there were no interruptions. The tone in the room shifted. People leaned forward. Questions started to turn from mocking to technical. James hadn't said a word, but his eyes were locked on Emily. He had read her proposal the night before, stayed up late even. Something about it had struck him. Its clarity, its boldness, the grounded logic behind it. Now watching her stand her ground, even under laughter, he knew she wasn't just another hopeful startup kid. She was someone who understood the land, who had lived the problem and built her own solution from the ground up. By the time Emily wrapped up her presentation, the sarcasm had disappeared from the room. The smirks were gone, replaced by curious glances. But no one was prepared for what would happen next, when the CEO finally stood up and addressed the room. For a few long seconds, the room was still. Everyone waited, unsure what the CEO would say. James Whitmore slowly stood up, adjusting the cuff of his navy blazer. He looked around the boardroom. at the men who had just been laughing, at the women now pretending they hadn't smirked, and finally at Emily Carter, who stood poised beside her laptop, not flinching even once. "Well," he began in a quiet but commanding voice, "I suppose I'm the only one in this room who actually read the full proposal." A few people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. He continued, walking slowly around the table. "Because if any of you had, you'd know that what Miss Carter just presented is not a theory, not a gamble. It's already in motion. Her method isn't just science. It's applied, proven, and replicable. It's also something this company should have discovered 5 years ago." Silence, total silence. He turned to Emily again. "I've spent decades in agriculture technology. I've seen data manipulated, projections sugar-coated, and field trials overhyped. But this is the real thing, and it wasn't created in a lab or a corporate think tank. It was built from sweat, failures, trial and error, and a deep relationship with the land most of us have never touched." Emily's eyes locked with his, steady and unreadable. James looked back at the board members, his tone sharpening. "You laughed because she said she was a farmer's daughter. And yet, this farmer's daughter has done what most of our R&D teams haven't achieved in years. Maybe you should laugh at that." No one dared speak. He turned to Emily again. "Miss Carter, or rather, Madam Chairwoman, if you'll accept, I'd like to offer you a permanent leadership role on our Agricultural Sustainability Board. You won't just be a partner. You'll be shaping how we move forward across 5 regions. And if you're willing, we'd like to explore licensing your regeneration method company-wide." Emily blinked once, but her composure didn't break. Inside, her heart was pounding. She hadn't imagined it going like this, not this fast, not this big. But she nodded slowly. "Yes," she said clearly, "I'd be honored." A few executives finally moved, scribbling notes, flipping back to her slides, suddenly treating her words like gold. The same people who mocked her were now leaning in, asking follow-ups. "Can we review your scalability numbers again? Do you have an outline of your next phase? What would implementation look like for corn and cotton crops?" Emily answered them calmly, one by one, every detail stored in her mind from years of work under the sun. She knew the soil, she knew the formulas, she knew the people behind every number she presented. After the meeting, as people filtered out of the boardroom, James walked beside her toward the elevator. "You did more than hold your ground in there," he said. "You flipped the whole table." Emily smiled, a small, quiet smile. "I've had a lot of practice," she said. "People always assume they already know who I am. They just never ask." He paused before stepping into the elevator. "Well, they'll know now," he said. Back in Iowa, a week later, Emily stood at the edge of her family's soybean field, phone in hand. She was finalizing contracts with Green Corps' legal team, and her voice was steady as ever. Her father walked up beside her, wiping his hands on a rag, unaware that his daughter had just secured a multi-million-dollar strategic partnership. She handed him the phone when it was over. "You're going to need to expand the West Fields," she said, grinning, "and maybe hire a few more hands." He stared at her. "What did you just do?" "Built something real," she said, pulling off her blazer and tossing it over the fence post, "and proved that being a farmer's daughter doesn't mean you're small. It means your roots run deep." From that day forward, her story spread quietly but powerfully. In farming communities, in boardrooms, in college classrooms where young women studying agriculture looked to her name as proof, not just of resilience, but of brilliance forged in places most people overlook. And the next time someone laughed at a girl with dirt on her boots, someone always stood up and said, "Careful who you underestimate. She might just end up running the show."